there's no question that each of us internally must adopt some sort of standard and rule before we can come to any conclusion on this. A starting place that I suggest is with what I believe is a universal principle of jurisprudence in the Western world, and that is some presumption of innocence. A presumption that a claim is not necessarily true just because it is stated. The alternative, if we have an alternative rule, invites nothing but chaos and disrepute on any one of us. The burden of proving the truth of a claim falls on the accuser. It cannot be our principle that someone may merely assert a claim and then the accused is left to prove it untrue. For reasons unclear to me, it appears that the Senate itself, through its retained counsel, took on the role of trying to prove the truth of the claim against Senator Sutton. That's disappointing to me. I believe instead the role of the Senate's counsel should have been to conduct and display to this board a neutral, complete examination of the facts, such that, for instance, witnesses called would be called whether or not they were likely to prove the truth of the claim against Senator Sutton. Anyone that might have had relevant evidence, possibly Val Milner, perhaps Brother Kyle, Father Dennis. Each witness, in my opinion, should have been questioned in a way to reveal the truth, not in a way to try to let some witnesses' testimony be easier or more convincing and other witnesses' testimony to be challenged. The role of the Senate, in its investigatory role through its retained counsel, in my opinion, should have been the role of an interested but neutral person, entity. In any case, even with the resources of the South Dakota Senate and one of the finest lawyers in South Dakota hired to carry it out, and even having taken on instead the role of trying to prove the truth of the claim, the proof here falls woefully short. The question I think we next have to ask ourselves is not just who has the burden of proving what, but by what standard do we judge the evidence? Given that one of the possibilities in this case would be to actually reverse the will of voters, undo a principle of democracy so important that our country has been engaged in a bloody war for years on the pretext of spreading democracy. And before such a move by an elite group ought to be considered, that we would decide one of us is not fit to serve despite what democracy would have, we surely must have some significant standard of proof. I think many would say, given the consequences, the potential consequences, the standard should be beyond a reasonable doubt. I doubt there is anyone sitting at this table, or probably in this room, that would seriously contend the evidence in this case proves anything beyond a reasonable doubt. At the very least, the standard that we use to judge the evidence then surely ought to be clear and convincing evidence. Anything less does a disservice to the democratic principles evidenced by our free elections, and it does a disservice to the integrity of this body, not to mention the reputation of one of its individual members. We can suspect what happened. We can speculate what happened. But suspicions and speculation are not the stuff of undoing elections and casting an elected official out of his role. And so I am left with the option of censure or exoneration. I differ with some of you about the automatic nature with which it is judged to be inappropriate to have a close friend sharing a hotel room. I think the cultural difference in South Dakota would show that people's opinions on that can vary depending on relationships. But given that this close friend was indeed about to be a page and was on one of the dates a page, as Senator Abdullah has indicated, in a relationship similar to an employee, I'm willing to say that ought not to have been done. And so I would agree that Senator Sutton should be censured for inappropriate conduct or the appearance of impropriety. And that is the most that we can say.